I buried my mother on a Tuesday morning in March, and by Tuesday afternoon, my wife was gone. The funeral had been small, just me, Rachel, and a handful of Mom's friends from the church. We stood under gray skies while the pastor spoke words I didn't hear. My mother had raised me alone after Dad died when I was 12. She worked 2 jobs to put me through college, never complained, never asked for anything back. Cancer took her in 6 weeks. I was 41 years old, and I felt like an orphan. Rachel stood beside me at the graveside, but she wasn't really there. Her phone buzzed twice during the service. She checked it both times. When we got home to our apartment in Portland, she was already pulling a suitcase from the closet. I stood in the bedroom doorway, still wearing my funeral suit, watching her pack. "What are you doing?" I asked. She didn't look up. "I can't do this anymore, Marcus." Rachel folded a sweater with quick, efficient movements. She'd always been organized, practical. It was one of the things I'd loved about her when we met 7 years ago. She managed a dental office, kept spreadsheets for our household budget, remembered everyone's birthday. But lately, that practicality had turned cold. "Can't do what?" I asked quietly. "This." She gestured around our small bedroom. "Living paycheck to paycheck. Watching you throw money at your mother's medical bills while we can't even afford a vacation. I'm 38 years old, Marcus. I want more than this." The words hit like physical blows. Mom's treatment had cost everything we'd saved. Insurance covered some, but not enough. I'd taken out loans, max credit card, sold my truck. Rachel had complained, but I thought she understood. Mom was dying. "She just died today," I said. Rachel finally looked at me. Her eyes were empty. "I know. I'm sorry about that. But I've been thinking about this for months." I sat down on the edge of the bed, legs suddenly weak. "Months? Since January," Rachel said, zipping the suitcase. "I met someone, Marcus. Someone who can actually provide a future. Derek owns a car dealership. He has a house in Lake Oswego, takes real vacations. He wants to marry me." The room tilted. "You've been seeing someone for 3 months. I didn't want to tell you while your mother was sick, but now." She shrugged. "There's no point waiting." I thought about the late work meetings, the new clothes she'd been buying, the way she'd started going to the gym at odd hours. I'd been too focused on Mom's declining health to notice. Or maybe I'd noticed and ignored it because I couldn't handle one more crisis. "Today?" I asked. "You're leaving today?" "Derek's waiting downstairs. He's helping me move my things to his place." She pulled the suitcase off the bed. "I'll come back for the rest later." I followed her to the living room, watching her gather items like she was checking out of a hotel. Her favorite coffee mug. The blanket her sister made. Photos of her family, but none of us together. "Rachel, please. Can we talk about this?" She turned at the door. For a moment, something flickered in her expression. Guilt, maybe. Or pity. "There's nothing to talk about. You're a good man, Marcus. You really are. But good doesn't pay bills. Your mother's gone now, and you're buried in debt. I can't spend the rest of my life digging out of that hole with you." "We made vows," I said quietly. "We were young. People change." She opened the door. A man stood in the hallway, tall, tanned, expensive watch. "Derek." He smiled at me like we were old friends. "Sorry for your loss, man. Tough day." I watched them walk away, Rachel's heels clicking on the tile floor, neither of them looking back. The door closed. The apartment fell silent except for the refrigerator humming. I was alone. The next week passed in a fog. I called in sick to my job at the hardware store where I managed inventory. Mr. Peterson, the owner, understood. He'd known Mom, had sent flowers to the funeral. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I sat in the apartment surrounded by the life Rachel and I had built, except now half of it was missing. Empty spaces on the bookshelf. Bare walls where her artwork had hung. Her absence was louder than her presence had ever been. On day 5, her lawyer called. Rachel wanted a divorce. Clean, simple, no contest. She'd take her car and personal items, leave me the debt and the apartment lease. How generous. I signed the papers without reading them. What did it matter? The woman I'd loved had walked out on the worst day of my life. Fighting over furniture seemed pointless. Mom's lawyer called on day 8. Richard Morrison from Morrison and Associates. He had a gentle voice, the kind that delivered bad news carefully. Mr. Hayes, I'm calling about your mother's estate. We need to schedule a meeting to discuss her will. I almost laughed. My mother didn't have an estate. She worked as a school secretary. Everything went to medical bills. That's not entirely accurate, Richard said. Could you come to my office tomorrow? Say 10 o'clock. I agreed because I had nothing else to do. The next morning, I showered for the first time in days, put on clean clothes, and drove to an office building downtown. Richard's office was small but neat, with law books lining the walls and a view of the Willamette River. He was older, maybe 60, with wire-rimmed glasses and a kind smile. He shook my hand firmly. I'm very sorry about your mother. She was a remarkable woman. You knew her for 20 years. She came to me when your father passed away, updating her will and setting up various protections. He pulled out a folder. Your mother was very private about her finances, Marcus. She didn't want you to worry. Richard opened the folder and pulled out several documents. Your mother inherited a significant amount from her parents, your grandparents, when they passed away 15 years ago. She invested wisely, lived modestly, and built substantial savings. I stared at him. That's impossible. She lived in a tiny rental. She drove a car from 2003. She worked until the cancer made it impossible. She did all those things because she wanted to, Richard said gently. Your mother believed in living simply. She also believed in securing your future. She watched you struggle through college, then work hard to build your life. She never touched the inheritance except to invest it. He slid a paper across the desk. Your mother's estate is worth $2.3 million. The house she rented? She owned it along with 3 other rental properties. The investments have grown significantly. Everything goes to you. The words didn't make sense. I read the number on the paper. $2,347,000. This can't be real. It's very real. There are some conditions which we'll discuss. But yes, Marcus. Your mother left you a fortune. I sat in stunned silence while Richard explained the details. Mom had purchased rental properties around Portland over the years, always in quiet neighborhoods, always at good prices. She'd hired a property manager to handle them. The tenants paid rent that covered expenses and generated profit. She'd invested the rest in a diversified portfolio that had grown steadily. Why didn't she tell me? I asked. Why did she let me think we were broke? Richard smiled sadly. She wanted you to build character, to understand the value of work. She also worried that knowing about money would change your choices. She wanted you to become the man you are because of who you are, not because of what you'd inherit. I could have helped her. Better doctors, better treatments. She had excellent care. She chose to spend her final months at home in peace with you nearby. That was her decision. Richard pulled out another document. There's one condition to the inheritance. You cannot tell anyone about it for 6 months. She wanted you to have time to grieve, to think, to plan without pressure from others. I drove home in a daze. $2.3 million. Properties. Investments. My mother had been secretly wealthy while I struggled to pay for her funeral. It felt wrong, like I was learning she'd lived a double life. Back at the apartment, I sat with a folder Richard had given me. Property deeds. Investment statements. A letter from Mom in her careful handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. My dearest Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for the secrets, but I needed you to grow strong without the crutch of money. You became exactly the man I hoped you'd be, kind, hardworking, loyal. The money is yours now. Use it wisely. Build the life you deserve. Don't waste it on people who don't value you. I love you always. Mom. I read it 3 times, tears finally coming. She'd known. Somehow she'd known that I'd need this. That life would knock me down, and I'd need help getting back up. The 6-month condition made sense now. She wanted me to have time away from people who might suddenly find me interesting. People like Rachel. I went back to work after 2 weeks. Mr. Peterson asked how I was holding up. I said I was managing. Co-workers offered sympathy. I thanked them and focused on inventory spreadsheets. Normal life, normal routine, except nothing felt normal anymore. Rachel called 3 weeks after leaving. I saw her name on the screen and almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Marcus, eh? How are you? Her voice was artificially bright. Fine. I wanted to check on you. I know this has been hard. I said nothing. She filled the silence. So, I was talking to my sister, and she mentioned something about your mom's will. She heard from someone at church that there might be property involved. There it was. News traveled fast in small communities. Someone had seen me at Richard's office, or noticed the property manager updating tenant information, and suddenly people were talking. There's nothing, I said flatly. Mom's estate went to settling her medical debts. I'm actually more in the hole now. A pause. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Rachel called again 2 days later. Marcus, I feel terrible about how things ended. I was stressed, not thinking clearly. Maybe we could meet for coffee. I don't think that's a good idea. Please? Just coffee. I miss talking to you. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a cafe downtown, the one where we'd had our first date 7 years ago. She looked good, new haircut, expensive jacket. Derek's influence. She ordered a latte, smiled at me like old times. You look tired. I've had a rough month. I know. I'm sorry about everything, truly. I handled it badly. She reached across the table, touching my hand. I've been thinking. Maybe I made a mistake. We had something good, didn't we? I pulled my hand back. You said good doesn't pay bills. She flushed. I was angry. Scared about the future. But Derek and I, it's not working out. He's controlling, always criticizing. I realized what we had was real. No. Her eyes widened. What? No, Rachel. You don't get to come back because your new relationship isn't perfect. You left me on the day I buried my mother. The day I needed you most, you walked out for someone with more money. That's not fair. I was drowning in your mother's medical debt. It was my debt, my choice. And you knew the kind of person I was when you married me. I don't abandon family. I stood up. We're done. Signed the divorce papers. She grabbed my arm. Marcus, wait. Maybe I was wrong about the money situation. If things have changed, if there's something from your mother's estate, so that's why she'd really called. The rumors had reached her. She thought I might have inherited something worth coming back for. There's nothing, I said coldly. My mother died with debts. I'm worse off than before. You made the right choice leaving. Enjoy your dealership, owner. I walked out while she called after me. In my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, I felt something shift. Anger, maybe. Or clarity. Mom's letter had warned me. Don't waste it on people who don't value you. Over the next month, Rachel tried everything. Phone calls I didn't answer. Texts I deleted. She showed up at the hardware store twice. Mr. Peterson, bless him, told her I was busy and asked her to leave. She sent flowers with a card. I was wrong. Can we talk? I threw them away. Her sister called, trying to mediate. Rachel's really struggling, Marcus. She made a mistake. Everyone deserves a second chance. She had 7 years of chances. She used them all up on March 15th. Meanwhile, I met with Richard regularly, learning about my inheritance. The rental properties were well maintained, generating steady income. The investments were solid. I wouldn't need to work if I didn't want to, but I kept my job anyway. Mom had taught me the value of purpose. Richard helped me plan. You're young. This money can set up your entire life if you're smart. Don't make big decisions quickly. Don't tell people. Just live and think. I took his advice. I paid off all my debts, medical bills, credit cards, the loan on Mom's funeral. I felt lighter, freer. But I kept living in the same apartment, driving the same car, working the same job. 2 months after the funeral, Derek called. I didn't recognize the number at first. Marcus. Derek Thompson. Rachel's a friend. I know who you are. Listen, man. Rachel's been talking about you a lot. I think she wants to get back together. Just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm done with the situation. She's all yours if you want her. He hung up before I could respond. So Rachel had already burned that bridge, probably when Derek realized she was more interested in my supposed inheritance than him. She showed up at my apartment that night. I opened the door to find her holding a casserole dish. I made your favorite. Can I come in? No. Marcus, please. I know I'm messed up. I'm not asking you to take me back right away. Just let me apologize properly. Let me be there for you while you grieve. I grieved alone. That's what you chose for me. Her eyes filled with tears. I was selfish and stupid. But we had 7 years together. That has to mean something. It meant something, I said. Until you decided a car dealership owner was worth more than our marriage vows. Until you walked out on the worst day of my life because I was too poor for your ambitions. It wasn't about money. It was completely about money. You said it yourself. Good doesn't pay bills. Derek has a house in Lake Oswego. Those were your words, Rachel. I started closing the door. I'm not your backup plan. Find someone else. She wedged her foot in the door. I heard things about your mother's estate. People are saying there were properties, investments. If that's true, if your situation has changed, get your foot out of my door. I have a right to know. We were married when she died. Community property laws mean we'd already separated. You left before the will was read. You have no claim to anything. I pushed the door firmly closed, locked it, and listened to her yell through the wood for 5 minutes before she finally left. I called Richard the next morning. Can she make any legal claim? No. The separation was clear, documented, initiated by her. She has no rights to your inheritance. 3 months after Mom died, I started making changes. Small ones at first. I bought a new truck, nothing flashy, just reliable. I moved to a better apartment with actual space and natural light. I took a week off work and drove to the coast, something I'd never done just for myself. I thought about Mom constantly. About the life she'd lived, the sacrifices she'd made, the wisdom of her silence about money. She'd wanted me to know struggle, so I'd appreciate success. She wanted me to build character before I had resources. I understood now. If I'd known about the money earlier, would I have fought as hard at work? Would I have married Rachel for love or convenience? Would I have become someone who thought money solved problems? Mom had given me the gift of becoming myself first. The money was just a tool to build on that foundation. Richard called in June. You're approaching the 6-month mark. Have you thought about what comes next? The condition ends in September. You'll be free to make whatever changes you want. I've been thinking about starting a business. Something meaningful. Your mother would like that. She always said you had your father's entrepreneurial spirit. I started planning. A hardware supply company that could compete with the big chains by focusing on customer service and community. I'd worked retail long enough to know what customers actually wanted. People who knew products, who cared about solving problems, who treated everyone with respect regardless of what they bought. I could do that. I could build something Mom would be proud of. Rachel called again in August. 5 months since she'd left. Her voice sounded different, desperate. Marcus, I'm begging you. Just hear me out. I told you. Derek kicked me out. I lost my job because his new girlfriend works at the dental office and made my life hell until I quit. My sister won't let me stay with her anymore because I borrowed money I can't pay back. I have nowhere to go. I felt nothing. No sympathy, no satisfaction. Just empty space where love used to be. That's not my problem. We were married for 7 years. You loved me once. Please, just help me get back on my feet. Alone, just enough for first month's rent somewhere. No. You're really going to let me be homeless? You made your choices, Rachel. You chose money over loyalty. You chose comfort over commitment. Now you're facing the consequences. I'm not your safety net. She started crying. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve help. But I'm desperate. I heard about your mother's money. Everyone's talking about it. You inherited millions. You can afford to help me. There it was again. The money. Always the money. Everyone's wrong. My mother's estate went to debts. I sold her rental properties at a loss. I'm living in a better apartment because I moved to a cheaper neighborhood outside downtown. I drive a used truck. I work at the same hardware store, making the same wage. There's no fortune, Rachel. You're lying. People saw you at that lawyer's office. They saw property documents. People see what they want to see. Goodbye, Rachel. I blocked her number. Changed my locks because I didn't trust her not to try using her old key. Moved forward with my life. September 15th arrived. 6 months exactly since Mom's death. The condition expired. I could now tell people about the inheritance if I chose. I chose not to. Richard and I finalized plans for the business. We'd incorporate, purchase a building, hire staff. I'd use a portion of the inheritance as capital, but structure everything properly. No flash, no waste. Just solid business planning. You're being very wise about this, Richard said. Most people your age would have bought sports cars and taken trips to Europe. Most people didn't have my mother. He smiled. She knew exactly what she was doing, leaving you that letter and that condition. She gave you time to see people's true colors before they knew you had options. She had. And Rachel's true colors had been on full display. Shallow, greedy, opportunistic. She'd loved the idea of me, the stability I offered, but not the reality of standing beside someone through hard times. I thought about the men in those viral stories I'd read online. The soldier whose wife forged his signature. The father whose son banned him from Christmas. The IT guy whose company fired him. They'd all been underestimated, betrayed, discarded. Just like me. I opened Hayes Hardware Supply in November. A 5,000 square foot building in a good location, fully stocked, with 5 employees who actually knew what they were talking about. Mr. Peterson came to the grand opening, proud as could be. Your mother would be so happy, he said. You always had a good head for this business. Customers came steadily. Word spread that we weren't like the big chains. We actually helped solve problems instead of just selling products. We offered delivery, installation advice, custom orders. Within 2 months, we were profitable. I kept living modestly. Nice apartment, reliable truck, decent clothes. Nothing that screamed money. I invested most of the profits back into the business and the remaining inheritance funds. Building slowly, carefully, the way Mom had taught me. Rachel found me in December. 9 months since she'd left. She walked into my store on a Saturday afternoon, and I almost didn't recognize her. She'd lost weight, wore cheaper clothes, looked tired. Nice place, she said, looking around. So the rumors were true. You did have money. I built a business. With what capital, Marcus? You were broke in March. I gestured to my office. Let's talk privately. Once the door closed, she turned on me. You lied. You told me there was nothing. That your mother left debts. But you opened this place 6 months later. Where did the money come from? A business loan. Investors. It's not your concern anymore. I could have been part of this. We could have built this together. Instead, you pushed me away and kept everything for yourself. The audacity was breathtaking. You left me, Rachel. On the day of my mother's funeral. You chose someone else because I couldn't give you the lifestyle you wanted. Now you're angry that I built something without you. I made a mistake. But you lied about having money. You manipulated me into leaving so you wouldn't have to share the inheritance. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. You actually believe that? You think I somehow orchestrated your affair with Derek? Convinced you to leave so I could keep money you didn't even know existed? Rachel's face hardened. I want what I'm owed. I was your wife when your mother died. I have rights to that estate. We were separated. You moved out before the will was read. Legally, you have no claim. We'll see what a judge says. She left, and I called Richard immediately. He sighed when I explained. She can try to sue, but she won't win. The timeline is clear. She abandoned the marriage before you received any inheritance. Community property laws don't apply. Rachel did sue. Her lawyer filed papers claiming she was entitled to half the estate because we were technically still married when Mom died. Richard demolished the case in court. We had documentation, her text messages about Derek, witness statements about her moving out, financial records showing she'd removed her contributions from our accounts before leaving. The judge dismissed it in 20 minutes. Mrs. Hayes, Ms. Thompson initiated separation and cohabitation with another partner prior to the reading of the estate. She has no legal standing to claim any portion of an inheritance received after abandonment of the marriage. Case dismissed. Rachel stood there stunned. Outside the courtroom, she grabbed my arm. This isn't over. It is, I said quietly. You made your choice. Live with it. The divorce finalized in January, almost a year since Mom died. Rachel got nothing except what she'd taken when she left: her personal items, her car, her freedom to build a life with whoever would have her. I got peace. Hayes Hardware Supply expanded that spring. I opened a second location, then a third. Hired more people. Paid them well, treated them fairly, built a reputation as a good employer in a city that needed more of those. I donated anonymously to causes Mom had cared about: scholarships for kids who lost parents, medical debt relief for families struggling like we had. I set up a foundation in her name, but kept my involvement quiet. The money was a tool, not an identity. I dated eventually. Met a woman named Claire who worked as a teacher, who knew nothing about my finances when we met, who liked me for the quiet, careful person I'd become. We took things slow. I told her about Mom, about Rachel, about learning who people really were when they thought you had nothing to offer. She understood. My ex left when I got sick and couldn't work. Some people only love you when it's convenient. We built something real on that foundation of shared understanding. 2 years after Mom's death, I stood in front of her grave on a March morning. The stone was simple, elegant, exactly what she would have wanted. Margaret Hayes, beloved mother. She taught by example. I did what you asked, I said quietly. I waited. I watched. I learned who really cared. You were right about all of it. The business was thriving. 5 locations now, 40 employees, expanding into commercial supply. I kept my promise to build something meaningful, to use the resources she'd left for good purposes. Rachel had disappeared from my life completely. Last I'd heard, she was living in Seattle, working retail, still looking for someone to solve her problems. I felt nothing but distant pity for the woman who'd walked out on the worst day of my life. I thought about the viral stories again. Those men who'd been underestimated and betrayed. They'd all gotten their justice through patience, planning, and letting their betrayers reveal themselves. Mom had given me the same opportunity. 6 months of silence to see who would surface when they thought I was vulnerable. Rachel had failed that test spectacularly. Claire joined me at the graveside, taking my hand. Ready to go. I nodded, but turned back for one last moment. Thank you, Mom, for everything. For teaching me to stand on my own first. For showing me that character matters more than comfort. For protecting me even after you were gone. We walked back to my truck, and I thought about how different my life would have been if Mom had told me about the money earlier. If Rachel had stayed because she thought I'd inherit. If I'd never learned who she really was. Some lessons cost everything to learn. Mom's final gift had been teaching me the most important one, that people show you who they really are when they think you have nothing left to offer. Rachel had shown me exactly who she was on a Tuesday in March when she packed her suitcase while I grieved. Everything that came after was just confirmation. I'd lost my mother, my marriage, and my old life. But I'd gained something more valuable, clarity about what really mattered and who deserved a place in my future. The inheritance wasn't the money. It was the wisdom to use it right. And Mom knew I'd figure that out eventually. She'd raised me that way.